The original Red Dead Redemption was my game of the year, my game of the generation, and it's got a place in my top 5 games of all time. So it's safe to say that I had high expectations for the pre-sequel. What I was probably most excited about was the prospect of finding out the backstory involving John Marston and the infamous Dutch Van Linder gang that we learned so much about in the original. Red Dead, established a foundation with plenty of lore and a lot of hints as to the deep history of, the Dutch Van Linder gang. The story starts out slow in Red Dead 2, and it has pacing problems, but great characters and a well-written script really alleviate that issue and still make it, very intriguing. And they really carry the story along and makes you want to find out what happens next. This is the well-crafted story of the rise and fall of the Dutch Van der Linde gang. And Arthur's narration between certain missions gives insight to his thoughts and perspectives on the current gang's status and the things that they endure. The voice acting is exceptional and helps to show clear contrast between each character. There's great use of inflections and accents really contributed to establishing who the characters really are and what they've been through, their origin. The diverse cast created, this capability for a more interesting interaction and dialogue between these characters because they have so many different backgrounds and there's so many different cultures at play and cultures that cross. The best part of it is it felt authentic and organic, whether it was a Native American, Irish, black, white. All of them had representation in Dutch's gang, but not once did you ever feel like these characters were shoehorned for inclusion, but rather it just made sense that each one of them were part of Dutch's gang. All of them were just natural parts of Dutch's gang, and it just happened to be a diverse cast. There's a character here that everybody would like and relate to and probably deem your favorite. My personal favorites were, of course, John Marston, because he's the protagonist in the first game. Sadie Adler, Charles Smith, Arthur, of course, got to throw him in there. And the game explores different dimensions of life's trials by presenting Arthur with a few personal and emotional challenges and tribulations that can't be fixed by violence, which is what he's used to. These trials show that he's not a one-dimensional character only driven by money and violence. He actually tries to be the voice of reason, and he's not always about shooting first, but he doesn't shy away from it either. The plot is ultimately the most satisfying aspect of this game and delivers on explaining the series of events that led to the fate of the infamous Dutch Van der Linde gang. Completing the story and going back and rewatching some of the scenes from the original Red Dead makes the whole story more meaningful, because when you played the original game and you watch these scenes, they didn't have much weight behind it because you didn't know the full history. So now it's a lot more meaningful, and in some ways it makes you realize that the complete story of Red Dead for both protagonists is almost like a Shakespearean tragedy. So I really enjoyed the story of Red Dead Redemption 2. Speaking on Red Dead's gameplay is like giving your college dissertation because there's too much to speak on. There's so much depth in this game. It deserves praise just for the sheer scope of the world and the content. I mean, just to name a few activities that you can do, play blackjack, poker, go bounty hunting or animal hunting, robbing trains, stores, playing five-finger fillet, winning sharpshooter challenges or horse races improves your deadeye or your horse's statistics. There's a wide variety of, wildlife ranging from alligators to cougars. The number of animal types has turned some gamers, like Jack Move Johnny, into full-blown zoologists because they'd rather spend all their time finding every animal in the game for a trophy rather than actually playing the game. There are also the random encounters, someone may try to steal your horse if you stop for them, or someone may ask your help after they've been bitten by a snake. And the choices you make in the world affect your karma meter. Side missions are creatively designed, because oftentimes in some games, the side missions end up being better than the main missions, right? And they go past just being fetch quest, thankfully. And sometimes they even feel, they are, I would say, interwoven into the main story missions. Maintenance is required of you in Red Dead 2. This includes, upkeep of your character, guns, horse, and the camp. Adds depth to the game, but isn't necessarily always fun. It's kind of like a necessary evil that lends to the experience. There's the different stores you have to make visits to, like the gunsmith, doctor's office, general store. You got to make sure you sleep and eat. And if we're honest with ourselves, nobody really gets on Red Dead thinking, oh, I can't wait to brush my horse today. Or I can't wait to move hay bales in the camp for positive karma. These are aspects of the game that feel like chores, and they actually are chores. So I can't necessarily negate the game for that, but I'm just simply pointing out and stating that not everything in not only this game, other games as well contribute to the fun factor, because there are certain parts of this game that you have to deal with that are just simply not fun. If auto ride, which is pretty much cinematic mode, wasn't in this game, you would have to manually ride everywhere, which would eventually start to wear on you and feel tedious. The stealth mechanics work well enough, even though I don't think there was enough stealth oriented missions as I would like. And of course, the clunky movement doesn't really help towards that gameplay when you're trying to be stealthy, which I will get into a little bit later. The AI. So the AI works well, even though I would say for the most part, the enemies have stormtrooper aim, but they behave in a way that present at least a decent challenge. The horse riding feels good, and the more you bond with your horse, the more its stats increase, and you unlock more moves like strafing or 180 turn. So now that I've pretty much spoken on some of the things I like about the gameplay, I want to focus on the main issues. And this is not to beat a dead horse, because everyone knows by now, what my major issue is with this game, because I've spoken on it in several videos and, let my feelings be heard on Twitter and everywhere else I can. But for the sake of this review, I still have to reiterate. The movement, controls, and the aiming in Red Dead 2 is abysmal, and it is far worse than the first game. It's probably far worse than any previous Rockstar game, because I don't remember being this aggravated with it, even in GTA 5. And it's been proven, this part is not my opinion, it has been proven through tests that there is a severe input lag issue. Red Dead has double the input lag of the average third-person shooter, according to these reports. Mind you, I'm playing on a 2 millisecond monitor, controller hardwired, dead zone all the way down, all the precautions that you can take to alleviate this problem, done it, and it's still only helped slightly. The input lag, of course, causes poor responsiveness and the inability to make, accurate, concise choices. On top of the input lag, the movement itself is clunky and stiff. Now, there are different controller schemes, right? And I think it was called the alternate first-person shooter scheme. But regardless of what scheme you use, they have multiple functions mapped to single buttons, which I feel is like a cardinal sin in gaming. I understand there's so much that they tried to pack into Red Dead as far as the functions and capabilities, but it's still like a nuisance in those ways. For example, switching shoulders, looking at your log, and opening your journal are all mapped to the left directional button. Another example, L1 is to aim, but it also serves as the interaction button for everything else in the game. So let me explain how that causes a serious issue. So what happens is sometimes you may hit the L1 button intending to aim at someone, but instead the interaction menu comes up, or vice versa. You may mean to interact with someone, but you pull your gun out on them. And that obviously causes problems in Red Dead because the AI reacts to that as a threat. And this is not only me who's personally, experienced this. I've talked to other players and they said they have run into the same issue because the buttons double or triple in some situations with different functions. Now, even sometimes sorting through the weapon wheel can feel cumbersome and difficult because if you're in a gunfight and you're trying to find a very specific item or even, switch to a gun, even though the game slows down, even those tasks sometimes can prove to be difficult. Now let me move on to the aiming. Now, I do not use auto aim, and let me explain why without sounding like demeaning or authoritarian or having a god complex. Let me just explain this very simply. Red Dead Redemption 2 is an open world third-person shooter. Keyword, third-person shooter. To shoot requires aiming. So follow my logic. So if you allow the game to aim for you, you are not playing a substantial part of the game. Analogy. If you played a puzzle game and the game solved the puzzles for you, or if you played a racing game or the racing game did the steering for you, that wouldn't make much sense. That's how I see it. Maybe some of the viewers don't see it that way. Okay, fine. We can disagree there. But that is how I see it. I see it as letting the game play for you, and that's personally why I refuse to use auto aim and I played through the entire game with it off. Now, many have tried to come up with the best, formula in the game for the controller settings with the dead zone, aim assist, sensitivity, and acceleration, and the fact that you have to do all of this to get the controls to feel right proves that there is something inherently wrong. Proves it. I think what needs to be highlighted, and I want to get off, the whole back and forth about the controls and whether people should use auto aim or not, because I think the bigger issue is Rockstar is simply using auto aim as a cover up to mask how bad the input lag, aiming, movement, and controls in their games are, because this is not an industry norm for a game to have auto aim on by default. This is abnormal. It's not normal at all. So it's simply a cover up for what their game is lacking. And I think that's the bigger problem and like the biggest flaw in the game. Because many have tried to defend why the things are in Rockstar games in different ways, but the fact of the matter is all those reasonings have been debunked and there is no excuse. Input lag is not intentional or ideal. No game aims to have input lag or poor movement or poor responsiveness. Good animations and realism do not have to result in poor responsiveness. Yes, can you adapt and adjust to the aiming and all the other problems in the game? Sure, but we shouldn't have to go through that inconvenience, and even though you can adjust and adapt, doesn't take away from the fact that it is an issue. Another problem I encountered was weapons unequipping seemingly for every little reason. And I'm going to give you an example and the reason I'm stating so many examples because I don't want people to think or say you're just like making this stuff up or you're just complaining for no reason. I'm giving you actual examples and proof. So example, I was on a mission and I took my 2-barrel shotgun with me and my carbine rifle with me from my horse. In the mission, a mission failure was triggered. I think I accidentally threw dynamite on one of the NPCs and they died. So I had to go, the mission reloaded to the checkpoint. When it reloaded to the checkpoint, I no longer had the weapons that I took off my horse. I only had my dual pistols. And this has happened to me more than once. Several different missions. Several different instances of certain things removing my equipped weapons from my person. Okay, this is not like an isolated incident where it happened once. It happened multiple times, and once again, this is something that I've asked other people, have they encountered, and I've gotten the answer yes. So my issue is, what is the point of me going through the trouble of getting my weapons off of my horse, and then if a checkpoint initiates, then all of those weapons that I wanted to use on that mission, because if it's a close quarters mission, for example, and I want my shotgun, what is the point of me going through all of that if my shotgun gets unequipped and I'm no longer near my horse? I'm in a gunfight now because that's where the checkpoint went back to. I can't call my horse in the middle of a town where we're shooting at each other. So now I just have to deal with the weapons, the default weapons that the checkpoint, gave me. That's annoying. So it's when all of these issues accumulate and they pile on top of one another that it creates this, holistically very frustrating experience. All these issues by themselves are minor. It's when they all come together that it really becomes aggravating. These are things that are part of core gameplay, so it becomes a nuisance to the whole game, no matter what aspect of the game you're playing. And those are like pretty much all my issues with Red Dead, and why I think this game is severely flawed in the gameplay department. And yes, of course, there is Deadeye, which is, upgrades throughout the game, which slows down the time and helps you to, make more accurate shots and tag enemies. But I don't feel like that should replace just free aiming. That's not a replacement. It's an ability meant to be used sometimes, not all the time. And I use it in clutch situations. I mean, if it was meant to be used all the time, it wouldn't have a cooldown. And there's a great selection of weapons in the game, especially given the time period, that perform very well, and I actually enjoyed using them. Red Dead 2 has a beautiful open world. I don't think it's flat out the best looking open world game we've ever seen, but I think it's the most intricately designed in scope, detail, and density. Each town you visit looks, pretty distinguishable from the last, and it avoids the whole cookie cutter design. One town, could be rural, and the other is clearly going through an industrial revolution. The game has great animations and physics. The amount of manpower and resources it took to design this game is unfathomable. The game is an absolute technical masterpiece. It's a technical masterpiece in Marvel. You'll see different terrains and landforms, like the swamplands, the forests, the mountains and the valleys, the level of shadows and lighting, draw distance. Definitely push these current gen machines to their limits. Probably the PS4 more than the Xbox One, which is probably why my PS4 sounds like a jet engine every single time I play it. I probably need to pick up that new model. This world is so big so that I expected some maybe low pixel quality, or maybe some places lacking anti-aliasing. But Rockstars really are, a master of their craft in making and designing these open worlds. The character models, look good. They're highly detailed, and even their outfits. The world seems alive. There are extensive customizations for Arthur's clothes and his hair. You can go to the tailor and customize how you want them to look. The day and night cycle combined with the dynamic weather creates scenes that are perfect for these beautiful screenshots. A thunderstorm at night is probably one of the most impressive things I've seen visually in this game. The only downside is we learned that the HDR in this game is kind of fake, and it ruined the picture quality. And the Western themed OST is a nice touch and helps to create the atmosphere in a lot of the scenes in this game. And I'm not necessarily a fan of country music, but there's they have a good selection in this game, especially this one song, Cruel Cruel World, that they play by Willie Nelson. I thought was absolutely amazing and really fit the setting and scene. So Red Dead is without a doubt an amazing game and a technical masterpiece, but the core gameplay tarnishes a lot of the experience, and these issues cannot be ignored. The game took huge steps forward since the original in 2011, but remains stagnant and even reverted in some fundamental ways. I consider this game a technical masterpiece, as I said, but not a gameplay masterpiece. You know, to me, a masterpiece overall is when the pros far outweigh and outnumber the cons. And I don't feel that way about this game. I don't feel that all of the pros far outweigh the cons. I think the pros probably negate or somewhat overlap the cons, but not far outweigh them. And that's why, you know, I don't necessarily agree that this game is a masterpiece. I think the original was a masterpiece. I think this is a great or amazing game, but not quite a masterpiece. The story, the content, the visuals in the open world, those aspects absolutely cannot be denied. And even some parts of the gameplay they did get perfect. But there's just a huge issue that still needs to be alleviated. So usually I give a score on a 0.5 interval. But this game is, I feel like it's so in between being great and a masterpiece. Is just the one thing that held it back, that I had to be completely accurate. I could not give it an 8.5, but I don't feel like I can give it a 9. So I had to go in between those, and I would give this game, honestly, even though numbers, you know, it's hard to really quantify a game in terms of a number. It's kind of arbitrary system. But I think the number that really accurately describes this game is an 8.8. So that's what I'm giving it. Thank y'all for watching my review. I appreciate y'all. Make sure y'all hit the like button. Make sure you hit the notification bell so you can know anytime I'm live streaming or when I upload a video. I appreciate all of y'all's support. I love y'all. Make sure y'all check out all the links in the description. And I'm out of here. Please let me know about what you think of my review, whether you agree, disagree. Regardless, let me know your thoughts in the comment section. And I'm out of here. Peace.